In this episode, we will try to explain how a risk matrix should be built before you grant access to eramba. As we explained, we have groups and users. Users go inside the groups. Now, when you're implementing eramba, you shouldn't really bother too much creating user accounts other than the accounts that you're using yourself as the administrator. The reason for that is that it's a lot easier to start or to implement eramba with groups rather than with user accounts. What I mean by that is that when you will create something into eramba, a risk, a control, or whatever it is, you will assign it to a group rather than to a specific user. If that user leaves the organization, this will be a problem for the risk. Now, if you assign one or two users to that group, say the head of the department or a couple of people from there, you know that you always have someone in those groups to receive the emails that eramba might send to them. So again, to implement eramba, always use groups is typically quite easier. Now, how do we define these groups? Well, we use a risk matrix for that, an access matrix for that. So what we do is in rows, we define who will have to access the tool. We don't have to define every single team in the company. We just need to write down the names of the teams that we know need to access eramba. And who needs to access eramba? Well, for sure you will need the GRC function, and you can call it whatever you want, just gonna call it GRC. And then remember, when you create controls and you create policies and you create risks, eramba will ideally send notifications to these people. If you're using enterprise, we'll send notifications to these people, so they will provide you with feedback. Testing evidence or reviews of risk or reviews of policies and so on. So you only need to create the teams that you know for certain will own something like a control, a policy, or a risk. So I'm gonna say, well, I have the development team. I know they need to access the IT team, and let's say HR. Now, what we have here are the teams and that need to access HR and finance, we will call it. The teams that need to access eramba. Now, we need to know where they need to access. And that's fairly easy because you should know more or less what features of eramba you want to use. So, for example, I know we want to use risk. And if we use risk, we will inevitably end up using policy module, the controls module, and the project module. Now, how do I know this? Well, that's because I already reviewed the documentation for risk management, and I know which modules are linked to that risk and I need to use. So these might not be entirely clear for you at this stage, but again, you should try to review the documentation before you implement eramba. Okay? So I know I will need access to these modules. Now, what I want from these people when it comes to risks is I only care that they can see, so they can view risks, and they can view reviews. That's it. So I want them to be able to see what risks they own, and I want to see the reviews of those risks. I don't want them to edit those risks. I don't want them to delete those risks, nothing like that. And the same goes for these people as well. Now, the GRC team, well, I want them to be able to do anything. Okay? On the policy side, the same stuff. I want them to see the view policies and the reviews. Yes, and that applies again to all these other people. Make this big here. Right. Controls, I want them to be able to view their controls and their audits. Yes, because when eramba will send those emails, again, I want them to provide me that feedback. The project module, yeah, they can see the projects, their tasks as well, and that's it. And the others, no, I don't want them to access this, and I want to access everything. So now you see, when you're implementing access management in any kind of software, typically by default, you forget about all the possibilities you have, and you only focus on what you want these people to do specifically, and you decide whether that's reasonable or not. So you see, I don't have to go and think, okay, what else can eramba do? I just go through the very basic things. So what we end up having here is that we know that development for the policy or the risk module, they need to do these things.